Reuters columnist and two-time Pulitzer Prize winner David Rode conducted more than a dozen interviews over the past month to turn out a special report on President Obama's secret wars. This fantastic piece will appear on Reuters.com, of course, and in the March-April issue of Foreign Policy magazine. David found that over the past 3 years, the Obama administration has carried out at least 239 covert drone strikes, more than 5 times the 44 approved under George W. Bush's administration. President Obama's reliance on drone technology underscores an often overlooked truth about his regime, that after promising to reign in executive power, Obama has arguably expanded presidential authority. He's turning out to be the tough guy, right, David?
Yes, it's true, and that's what's so surprising. You have this sort of former constitutional law professor who, took the oath of office, and there was such an sense that he was going to open up, make things less private, less secret, and in fact, he's done the opposite.
And maybe even be a little more liberal, a little softer,
yes.
less extension of U.S. power. But that's not what's happening?
No, and what's really happened is there's sort of been an embrace of the CIA by Obama. And to be fair to him, it's been effective. I mean, clearly everyone knows about the raid that killed Osama bin Laden, but he's also had this huge increase in drone strikes, primarily in Pakistan, but also in Yemen and in Somalia. And one of the really surprising things is that in Yemen, 3 American citizens have been killed by American drones. And the ACLU and other groups have sort of pointed out if a Republican president had done this, there would be much more of an outcry. In essence, 3 Americans were executed by the U.S. government, but there was no public court proceeding, no public presentation of evidence at all.
But, I mean, David, these were not Girl Scouts, right?
That's correct, but it sets a very dangerous precedent. In terms of drone technology, there's at least a half dozen countries that are trying to get drones, armed drones that they can operate and take care of things. This is a somewhat, maybe outlandish scenario, but it's possible. Theoretically, you could have Chinese drones sort of circling over the United States, and a Chinese drone could take out a dissident that they disagreed with, or a Tibetan, let's say. And to them, to the Chinese government, these are terrorists who are plotting, disruptions in China. But the United States has already set the precedent where it has drones that circle the world and take out people that we deem to be terrorists.
Apart from the technology, though, David, how different is this really? I mean, in the Soviet era, we had Soviet spies with poisoned umbrella tips, taking out people who they hated around the world. The CIA has been murdering people for decades.
Well, there is, legally a ban on assassinations, particularly of, leaders in particular. I think what's different is that, and one of the problems with the drone technology is that it's presented by the Obama administration as a very light footprint. Again, a good thing they're doing, and I want to credit them for this, is they have a much more sophisticated and I think more effective approach to the use of force in the Bush administration. Bush had these huge, ground invasions in Afghanistan and Iraq, what's called a very heavy American military footprint. Obama's done the opposite. He doesn't really have large troop surges. He's drawing down in Afghanistan and Iraq, and he's using these drones for these very pinpoint uses of force against people, a very small number of people that he says directly threaten the United States.
Our ability to respect the sovereignty of other countries and to limit our incursions into somebody else's territory is enhanced by the fact that we are able to pinpoint strike an al-Qaeda operative in a place where the capacities of that military in that country may not be able to get them. So obviously a lot of these strikes have been in the Fatah and going after al-Qaeda suspects who are up in very tough terrain along the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. For us to be able to get them in another way would involve probably a lot more intrusive military actions than the one that we're already engaging in.
The problem with drones is that they're not a light footprint. Having a drone kind of circle overhead in these foreign countries, really infuriates local people. And we in the States think it's this pinprick, very minor thing, and it's not. It's a very, very heavy, kind of aggressive thing to use a drone strike.
In one way, it's a very light footprint, which is no American soldier risks her or his life. Isn't that terrific?
It is for us, and you're absolutely right. In a sense, drones are irresistible to American politicians because...
And thank goodness!
Well, thank goodness for Americans, and thank goodness for American politicians. In the short term, they are, disastrous, I think, overusing them. I think they should be used, but used much more sparingly. They are very positive and very popular in the United States. They're incredibly unpopular in Pakistan, where they've been used the most. And Pakistan today is sort of more unstable than it was when we started using these drones. So we need to think of, the impact outside the United States and outside of American politics.
I want to understand your point about drones not really being a light footprint. I can understand that it's not so great having a foreign country's drone circling your country and dashing in and killing someone. Surely, however, less invasive than an actual invading army, as happened in Iraq or Afghanistan.
That's true. I completely agree with you. But one of the problems is that the program is covert. The administration, told me that they want to make it more public, and that they're actually keeping them covert because they have a request from certain leaders in Pakistan that want to keep it all private. Secretly, Pakistan is working with us. The administration says
not that secretly. We're talking about it right now.
They maintain, and this is the absurdity. What you're pointing out is the absurdity of this covert approach. One of the things that happened in the administration was that Richard Holbrooke, the former special ambassador to the region, and many people in the State Department have pushed for this to be a public program. So the U.S. can say, we carried out a drone strike last night. This is the person we targeted. Here's the videotape of the strike. And if there are civilian casualties, they should admit it. But right now, it happens. There's no U.S. narrative of what happened. And the Taliban and Al-Qaeda and other jihadists in Yemen and Somalia as well say it killed simply civilians. So you have this, enraged Pakistani public. In Yemen, the leadership in Al-Qaeda of the Islamic Maghreb has actually grown as the U.S. has carried out drone strikes. And this tactic is not working. It works for Americans because it's far away from us, but it's not working in these other countries.
Talk to me a little bit about this notion that you've touched on, David, of transparent drone strikes. It sounds sort of like wiki war. Why is that a good idea, and who's advocating it?
This is what Holbrooke specifically and others have pushed for the military to take over the drone strikes. Right now, the entire program is run by the CIA. It's CIA drones, CIA personnel, and there's no review of it at all. The military carries out drone strikes in war zones. They carry them out in Iraq, they're carrying them out in Afghanistan, and they carried out many of them in Libya as well. And the military has a sort of clear regimen for investigating strikes. If there are reports of civilian casualties, they investigate it, and they will pay compensation. And certainly it's not a perfect system, but it's far better than this kind of clandestine thing where the Americans are killing people and it just plays into these conspiracy theories. The strikes are successful. Again, they should continue in terms of they are slowing down Al-Qaeda and limiting its global reach, but we want to make sure that we're not creating more terrorists by making people in Pakistan and Yemen and Somalia so angry that they want to go join these terrorist groups.
David, in your piece, you point to this apparent paradox that the Obama administration, which is, they're Democrats, the president is a constitutional lawyer, these are very intellectually sophisticated people who are probably on the liberal side of the spectrum, are so aggressively using drones. How do they justify it when you talk to them about it?
They say there's no way for them to get into these areas, that this is remote corners of Pakistan, remote corners of Yemen and Somalia, and the drones are the only way to use these forces and to get at these terrorist groups. And that's largely true, but the problem is the sort of CIA has repeatedly won these battles inside the administration. The American ambassadors in Pakistan have repeatedly asked the CIA station chief to not carry out. There's a certain kind of strike called a signature strike. There's a personality strike, which is when there's a specific individual militant and they have intelligence on him and they try to kill that person. A signature strike is based on the movement of a group of people on the ground, and simply based on the movement of the group, the U.S. will carry out a drone strike. The State Department people say that's very inaccurate, that causes civilian casualties, and it should stop. And there was a White House review, but in the end, Obama sided with the CIA and gave them the power to continue to carry out these broad and I think very, on maybe too excessive signature strikes.
So is this mostly about the CIA winning in the intra-governmental wars in Washington?
It is, and I think it's a short-term success for the CIA and the administration, but in the long term, we have to, we can't avoid the hard work of actually trying to work with moderates in Pakistan and Yemen to try to stabilize those countries. This is essentially, as one former general told me, that we're essentially engaged in attrition warfare. We pick off leaders here and there in these drone strikes, but it doesn't really solve the kind of long-term problem.
Last question, David. How, if at all, is this likely to play into the election campaign?
I think it's actually a strength for Obama, and this is, why he's been doing it. He got bin Laden. There has not been a major terrorist attack in the United States in his first term. Drones are killing senior leaders. They have sort of really weakened al-Qaeda. Again, the problem is more these signature strikes, this kind of excessive use of drones that could come, back to haunt him. So I think this is all, like so much else about politics. It will allow Obama to be tough and sound accomplished on national security, and that's how it'll play out in the short term. How it plays out in the long term, we will see.
Okay, well, we will see, and I encourage everyone to read an absolutely fascinating and very, very timely piece by one of the most brilliant journalists around, my friend, a person I'm really delighted to call my colleague, our columnist, David Road. I'm Chrystia Freelan, and this is Fast Forward.